Recently, on the 17th of August 2022, the National Union of Electricity Workers commenced a nationwide strike with fencing of headquarters of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, in Abuja, and then, of course, the gradual shutting down of substations across the country, what we witnessed yesterday. This interrupted power supply across franchise areas of electricity for 24 hours. The strike was suspended after an emergency meeting with the government, which promised to consider the workers' demands within 2 weeks. The statement was made known to the media by Joe Ajaero of the National Union of Power Workers, who is the union's deputy president. In his words, and I quote, "We have suspended the strike. Operations are returning to normal with immediate effect," he said. And he added, "If in 2 weeks nothing is done, we will resume the strike." End of quote. Although the union said it will suspend the strike for 2 weeks, this is something Nigerians will not be looking forward to. That is resumption of strike. Again, that's if it happens again. So what should be the way out in the interim? The question is, what might be running in the minds of many consumers of this very essential and very necessary commodity that makes and keeps life running day in, day out in all activities? How can consumers hold back if peradventure the 2 weeks elapse and no form of solution to the demands are met? What will be the impact of this, seeing that this has been some form of consolation in the midst of lack and want in our today's economy? This is the focus of our discussion on Nigeria Today. I am Lydia Odijochi. I'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. My guests are ready and waiting. Joining me now for more insights as we analyze the electricity workers' nationwide strike suspension in the studio is Kunle Olubiyo. He was with us yesterday, just like a part 2 of the discussion. Yes. President, Nigeria Consumer Protection Network. Once again, welcome for us to continue our discussion for where we stopped yesterday over the initial strike. Also, Bode was here with me yesterday, but today he's joining us via Zoom. Bode Fadikpe, CEO, Sage Consulting and Communications. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Very clear, loud and clear. Glad to have you join us once more.
Thank you for having me. And
yes, we can't wait.
Good evening to the comrades.
Yes.
Thank you.
We can't wait to hear what more you have to add.
Veteran of so many battles.
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. I can also see Joe Ajaero, NLC Deputy President, reaching us via Zoom. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you very much. I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you for honoring our invitation. All right, let me start with you. Your union went on strike, and after 24 hours, you called it off. While we were here in the studio talking, you were having your negotiations. Can you give us a brief explanation on what went down during your meeting?
Well, we met and discussed the issues. And if you watch the character of those of us that pioneered that sector, we are reluctant to go on strike. But the issues were issues that have been on since 2013. A strike was called in 2019. Agreement signed. And as at today, none of those agreements were attended to. And we have been writing letters. And since March, when we renewed this call again, to date, nobody, honored or acknowledged our correspondences. And that was why when we started an action, we started with picketing, mere protests, to draw attention, because our first point of call was not to withdraw our services. And nothing happened before we moved a step. And that step we took, you can agree with me that it didn't take up to 12 hours. And as responsible organization, we are ready just to make a point, to say that we have a point and we are responsible, but we are keeping adamant. Total withdrawal of our services may not all go well for the nation. So we went in there, we discussed on the issues raised, the issues of stigmatization via a letter written by the office of the head of service of the Federation, who invariably announced to the meeting that the office does not acknowledge letters from the unions, that they don't write the unions. So if we like, we can write it at Kingdom. But in all honesty to the Ministry of Labor, they say when you get a letter from an organization, at least you are acknowledged. But they say that by their rules, they don't write any they don't acknowledge any Now that one was one of them. And then the issues of what was the short payment of staff of old PSCN since 2013 came on board again, which was part of the issue that came up in 2019 that made the Speaker of House of Rep to summon a meeting and gave us assurance that those things will be fulfilled within 3 months. 3 months will enter 3 years. And finally, the issue of, violating a collective agreement which enjoyed joint authorship. If me and you agree, if we have a contractual agreement, no one party should go back to act unilaterally. Because in power relations, if you act unilaterally, the other party has a tendency to react. Those are some of the things we discussed, and the government said they will address them in 2 weeks, and they put up a committee, that will report back in 2 weeks. So far, that was what happened in the meeting yesterday.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Now let me come to you, Kule. You were with us yesterday, and in fact, while we were here, the negotiations were going on, and in fact, Fadipe was saying that he's sure before 12 midnight, the strike will be called off, and of course, before then, while we were here, it was called off. Now, what can you say is the way to go now? Now that the strike has been called off.
Suspended.
Yes. Okay.
These are, like you rightly said, these are legacy issues. 2013, 2019, 2013 to date is close to 10 years. 9 years. So if you have an unresolved issue, it's like postponing the evil days. We are a nation in transition, evolution of nationhood or development process. There are always different prices to pay. As end users of electricity, we are the receiving end. It's at an enormous cost to the economy. But what can we do? Let us just make sure that this particular industrial issue, if we decide to walk back and pretend that it's not going to rear its head again, government has a window of 2 weeks to bend backward and get the issues, legacy issues resolved. But if you do, it's like if you don't ostracize the cancerous malignant and we're just pouring deodorant on it, we are not going to make progress. So the progress is that government, at the level of leadership, should learn to upscale the culture of respect for sanctity of contract. Is equally talking about profiling of us collectively as individuals, citizenry, as a nation, if we don't have enforceability of contract and if we don't have regards for gentleman agreement. So it's quite fundamental, and we hope that in a few days to come, government, the aviation industry and this electricity sector have something that they can use to hold everybody to ransom. Everybody's affected by electricity. We have seen, and we only hope that this culture of making sure that you give deadline and resolve it, the Minister of Labour, we call it, extend that to the ongoing ASU strike. We need to bend backward midway, you know, and shift ground and in national interest, get the nation working as it used to be. Yeah.
Fadipe, we spoke on what the demands are, but what I want you to relate to us now is a disruption this may cause to all concerned. Do we need all this with all that is happening, especially for the common consumer of this essential commodity?
You know, it's a wonderful question you have asked. There is a school of thought that thinks that the union should not have gone the way it has gone. As a matter of fact, I have seen conversations around the fact that the action of the union amounts to a sabotage, and that people should be sued for economic sabotage and all of those things. And we were querying the legal basis of their action, whether it is a proprietary action and things like that. I'm not going to delve into the legality of their action. I mean, I know clearly that at the risk of speaking in favor of the union and Comrade Ajero, as a veteran of so many battles, I know he will not slip into the pit of not giving government enough notice or not following the legal requirements of undertaking an action as serious as calling a strike that will bring about interruption of power supply. But let's look at it from another perspective. Why is it that we have a government that will always want things to get to this point before they take action? The president is quoted to have always said that we will deal with them in the language that they understand. Is the language of strike, is it the language of strike that our government understands? If a matter has been on since 2013 and they had an agreement in 2019, and at the level of the Speaker of the House of Rep, that's a very serious, that's a high level public officer in this country. At the level of the Speaker of the House of Rep, he made a pronouncement that within 3 months, this matter will be resolved, and 3 months became 3 years. Look, I mean, what we are seeing is that government has encouraged a situation where it has said to everybody that if it is not forced to do something, it is not prepared to do anything. That's a level of complacency. That's a level of delinquency that nobody wants to tolerate. What? Okay, all of the discussions they had yesterday did not result into any concrete agreement. So why didn't you have that discussion before now? They didn't sign any agreements yesterday. All the things that they did yesterday was promise. So why didn't they have all of the meetings before now? So if there's anybody that should be blamed, it is the minister, honorable minister of power. It is the honorable minister of state of power, and everybody that is a government official that ought to have taken a decision before yesterday. Why did they allow the union to drag everybody to the point? And we know that our power sector is very fragile. We know that it is very, very sensitive to little things like this. We have not been able to achieve 5,000 megawatts. The other day, the chairman of NEC legislated 5,000 megawatts. What is the 5,000 megawatts? Now we are seeing stories in the social media that Mr. President is apologizing that we cannot give you 5,000 megawatts. I mean, it's embarrassing enough. Now for somebody in that meeting to open his mouth to say that we don't acknowledge letters, that's even a very uncivilized way of doing things. An organization, a registered body will write letter to you, and you will be courageous enough to tell the public. I mean, you are telling them that you are not a responsible government official. At least acknowledge the letter. We are in receipt of your letter. We will get back to you. It's a civilized way of doing things. For God's sake. I think we need to ask these questions. Do our rulers love this country? Do they really love this country? Or they just get into a position of governance and they do whatever? Are they leaders or occupants of leadership positions? Occupants are different from leaders. Leaders take you to somewhere. Occupants just sit down there and they do whatever they want.
Yeah, so I know this is a topic that you are so passionate about. Of course, everybody concerned.
Yes, I'm very passionate about it because it's very painful that our power sector is where it is today.
Okay, we'll take a break now. We'll come back to talk more. Please stay with us.
This is NTA News 24 broadcasting from Abuja. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms.
Start Times Channel 101, Freak TV Channel 703, GSTV Channel 419, and Go TV Channel 46.
For more information, log on to our website www.nta.ng or join us on our social media handles, Facebook at NTA News 24.
For comments, suggestions and inquiries, send an email to news24@nta.gov.ng or call us on the following numbers.
NTA News 24.
News and more news.
Thank you for staying on. My guests are still with me, and we are still discussing the nationwide strike suspension by electricity workers. Joe, let me come to you now. Let's talk about the national grid. It is an asset for the nation. Don't you think strike in this area for us is a negative, and possibly you should leverage on other avenues to vent your agitations? What do you say?
Well, that's where we work. And if you acknowledge the sensitivity of where we work, you equally treat us with such passion of where we work. There's nothing, when we are frustrated and there's nothing we could do, we exercise that last right of our right not to work. But one good thing is that we have restricted it to a matter of hours, because this nation cannot survive a 1 week action, 3 days action, or 4 days action, from the electricity sector. We show more sensitivity than the people who are on the other side, and it takes two to tango. That is why, beyond the statutory provision for 2 weeks notice, when we give 2 weeks, at times we allow it to run into months, writing letters, appealing to all the people concerned, publishing it in the newspapers. There's no strike that takes place in our sector that most newspapers have not reported, that strike imminent, electricity workers give notice, and nobody attends to the demands. So in such a situation, what do? Especially when your correspondence is not even acknowledged. You write from March. We started this exercise from March, and we are writing. We are even writing for clarification, before we went into the issue of ultimatum. The last ultimatum expired last month. It's not even something that expired. And we did further letters. We met with TCN and others. Can you help us reach out to these people? It got a level that, we are helpless and we didn't know what to do. And we're under pressure by our members, who are suffering this. So
still stay with you, Joe. Now, the report just reaching us says that prior to the strike, we could only generate about 3,000 megawatts. That's before the strike. Now, after, if issues are resolved, are things going to get better?
Well, if things are to get better, it's not even why there is problem, why there is disagreement between husband and wife. The issue is, what is our capacity? I think that question should be asked and intelligent and very urgently and cogently too. The power sector is collapsing. It's collapsing on our heads. As we talk today, the discourse have been taken over by banks, who allegedly were trying to collect money borrowed by those investors to buy the discourse. And as a union, we came out to say that these investors you are bringing here don't have the technical competence, they don't have the financial muscle. And some people deceive this government to say sell. And since after sell, the government has invested 2 trillion to assist people for a sector that was privatized at 400 billion. You sell your house at 400 billion, and then you give the person 2 trillion. What type of economy is that? for him to paint the house or to do what? That is what we are having. That is what we are seeing. And those of them in the generating companies, none has added 1 megawatt between that time and now. And there's no plant being constructed that will even add tomorrow. So we remain constant. If you don't have any power station to be commissioned this year or next 2 years, you will still continue to revolve on that 3,000 you are mentioning now till thy kingdom come. So there's no conscious master plan for us to move forward. If anybody is selling you 5,000 megawatts, he's not going to get it from the moon. You have to build a power plant, build a transmission line, and then fortify your distribution networks so that it can work. It's not by mouth, it's not by proclamation.
Okay, let me go to Fadipe. I know you want to react to what Joe is saying. Let us hear your closing thoughts.
Well, I think the issue of whether they have added 1 megawatt or not, I think that we may need to interrogate the position of the comrade on that one. To the best of my knowledge, I think there are 1 or 2 GenCos that have actually done something. I know that Transcorp Power in Ughelli, I also know that Mainstream has also tried to do 1 or 2 things. How much of that, of what they have done has contributed to the growth and development of the power sector is a different thing entirely. But I think the issue, we must not lose sight of the issues in focus here. And it is that government does not have respect for simple agreements. And it is at a bigger level is affecting this sector seriously. If you cannot, respect little agreement as people becoming principal manager and going to AGM, they don't need an interview. If you cannot respect that agreement, then how do you respect bigger agreements of contracts? If the head of service will issue a circular saying that those who had worked in the power sector before should not work in other power sectors of the, other agencies of the power sector, are they not Nigerians? That's an affront on their fundamental human rights, for God's sake. So when are the people who are leading this? It's so painful. I can't rationalize this, honestly. So I think everybody needs to sit down and really look at what we need to do to rescue this sector from collapsing on our heads. We really need to sit down. The time has come for that. We cannot continue to...
What should be expected as time goes on before these demands are met? Finally.
Yeah, these demands are local issues, though it has a snowball to having a backlash effect on the whole nation. But the truth of the matter is that we are waiting for 2023, when we expect that all the commitment, gas purchase agreement, power purchase agreement, because the deal is between GenCos and MBET. MBET, they are the one that have direct interface. They are the bulk buyer, and they say they take responsibility. And when there are shortfall, it's government that have been bearing the responsibility. So we want to appeal to government. During the COVID, all the private GenCos shut down. If not for government investment in Niger Delta Power Holding Company. And now, some individuals, as part of the parting gift for transition in 2023, want to sell and keep to themselves. We need to have a backup that when this private sector says cash and carry, government can fall back on this NIPP. And when, at the end of the day, they are sold, the money should be plowed back to the organization as a revolving fund, so that we don't sell all our houses in the course of trying to share money to our elites, political elites. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, this has been one discussion that will go on and on again, because issue of power is a very passionate one. And we just want to clear the air and have a permanent solution to the demands of our striking electricity workers who have now suspended their strike. So we need you to also, you've told us what needs to be done. We know that those concerned are listening.
Innovate all the agreements by next year, and let's have good and serious-minded investors.
All right. Now, I want to thank Bode Fadipe, CEO, Sage Consulting and Communications. We appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
And Joe Ajero, NLC Deputy President, who connected with us via Zoom. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
To Kunle Olubio, President, Nigeria Consumer Protection Network, here with me in the studio. I appreciate you.
Thank you, the Igede brand ambassador.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a good host.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, our viewer back home, we appreciate your time always joining us on this program. Thank you for keeping a date with us always. Remember, the program airs weekdays at 7:30 p.m. You can watch this and other episodes at www.youtube.com/NJ24Hub. I'm Lydia Odijochi saying bye for now. See you tomorrow.